Hi, it's Amanda here. We forgot to mention when recording this episode that there is another trigger warning, as there were for the first two episodes about this season of Heartstopper. There will be discussion primarily at the end of episode 8 about eating disorders, bullying, and self-mutilation and outing. So if any of those topics are particularly disturbing to you, we recommend you don't listen to this episode or at least skip over those parts. Also, another trigger warning, around 40 minutes in, I say that we get a really sweet montage of the Friends to August by Taylor Swift. That is actually factually incorrect. It is to 7 by Taylor Swift, and I am so sorry to the Swiftie community. I hope that you are not too triggered by my error and can find it in your hearts to not cancel me and still enjoy this episode.
Get home from school, turn on my TV. Who are these friends staring right back at me? Now that we're older, why don't you come over and go back in time with me? 90s babies nostalgia.
But I need you to say your name.
Hi, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Jessica, and this is 90s Babies Nostalgia, where two fully grown millennial women watch and rewatch tween entertainment from the early 2000s, but not this type.
Just to be clear, we are not sponsored by nor affiliated with any of the brands, the shows, the production companies, the distribution companies, the actors, or anyone affiliated with this project. We just really like talking about TV. And today, the TV that we are talking about is
Heartstopper.
Season 2, the finale, and the penultimate episode.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't listened yet, go back because we have already covered the first 6 episodes in our previous 2 episodes of this podcast. We really thought we were going to cover the show in 1 originally, and then we thought 2, and then our technology said, ha! But that's okay, because I feel like these 2 episodes and our wrap-up thoughts really deserve the time and attention of their own episode.
Totally.
As stated, not affiliated with anything, and that includes Netflix, that includes Seesaw Productions, and that includes the Writers Guild, the motorcycle outside of my apartment, and SAG-AFTRA. We support unions, we support strikes. We think that the creators should be fairly compensated, and most of our highlights about Heartstopper are about Alice's genius and the performances put on by the cast, none of whom I believe are in SAG or the Writers Guild, but they have been supportive of the strikes, and this is a Netflix distribution, so be mindful, but also consume queer media.
100%. What are you listening to or watching?
I've been having hobbies.
Ooh, tell me more. What hobbies?
I mean, like I have been doing pole weekly. So, and then I want to get stronger. I've been doing pole fit almost weekly since like April or May, I can't remember. And the last couple of weeks we tried learning an invert, which is where you like you hold on with your arms and then lift your legs up and over your head so you're upside down, and like I can only do it with a strong spot. So now I'm like waking up earlier and exercising because I gotta get those muscles strong so I can do it. And I've been seeing friends a lot, and I've been going on walks, and I've been reading, and my mental health is healthing. It's so weird, you do the things that they say are good for you and you feel better.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell? What about you, Jessica? What have you been listening to or watching?
I'm struggling because like I feel like nothing, but besides, because we just recorded last week, And so I feel like I gave all my hot things then. But I will give music recommendation to all my like alt rock listeners. An artist called K-Flay. If you're into like alt rock pop, she's awesome. She's queer. I just saw her, I don't know, like 3 months ago. She's also disabled. Like about six
Ooh.
months ago, she lost all of the hearing in her right ear from getting sick and thought it was going to come back. Turns out not going to come back. Is deaf in one of her ears, thought it was going to ruin her career. And she is like out there headbanging, throwing on like an hour and 15 long set, just having an awesome time. And she just put out a new song with Vic Fuentes from Pierce the Veil called Irish Goodbye. And it's about like just that moment where you realize you can just like say goodbye to the toxic shit in your life. And it's just a banger. It's so good. All of her music is so good. So go give K-Flay a listen.
I think that Charlie in episode 7 would greatly appreciate that song. If it's about being able to just say goodbye to the toxic shit in your
Oh,
life.
yeah, I agree. I was like, what? But
You're like,
yes.
where the hell are you going with this?
Mm-hmm. Episode 7. Sorry.
Yeah. The episode opens up with Charlie looking at his phone, and Ben has been reaching out to him incessantly. Like, he first is like, can we just talk? And then hours later, he's like, I saw you read my message. But Charlie stays ignoring him. And then covering the Ben and Charlie part for a second, there's an art show that the whole gang goes to, and Ben, being the super stalker that he is, shows up at this art show. It's not even nearby.
No, it's far. They're all talking about like, how are we going to get to this art show? It's so far away. I guess we're going to all take the train together. And he fucking shows up?
Yeah, it's so creepy. And so as Nick and Charlie are leaving this art show, Ben is right there, and he apologizes for hurting Charlie and says he knows that he was in the wrong and that he was in a really messed up place, but he just, his parents will never accept him, so he can't come out. And the only reason Charlie even listens to him is because Ben says he's going to a different school for sixth form. He won't be returning to Troom. And Charlie tells Ben that, you know, he's glad that he realizes what he did is wrong, and he hopes he's genuinely becoming a better person, but he shouldn't have to be there to watch him do so. And it doesn't make up for anything that he did, and goes into detail about how the way Ben treated him really fucked with his head and made him feel like that's what he deserved. So we get more insight into Charlie's mentality due to that relationship. And at the end, you see this, like, Charlie and Nick walk away, and you see this rainbow wave towards Ben's feet, and then he walks in the other direction, sort of symbolism of him walking away and back into the closet and not accepting himself.
Mm-hmm. I also think another thing to point out there too is, so not only does like Charlie talk through with Ben like the effects of the way that Ben treated him and how that like really affected the way that Charlie thought about himself, he also was like, I don't owe you forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can say all of these things and I hope you go become a better person, but like, I don't need to forgive you, and I'm not going to.
And Alice did that intentionally. Ben stuck around longer than he did in the comics, and that was because Alice wanted Charlie's storyline and arc to have sort of a finish line, but also acknowledged that like people shouldn't have to forgive their abusers, and didn't want to put that on TV because so often that's what we see. So I really liked it. Also, Ben's apology was actually very good. Like like until Charlie tells him off, Ben's apology is very good, and you kind of think he might forgive him because it's a decent apology.
Mm-hmm. And you can kind of tell he means it too.
Yeah.
It's not like he's not just saying those things to say those things. He truly does mean his apology.
Yeah, he's thought about his actions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also just sad because Sebastian Croft is a fun member of the cast, and he has really nice hair, and this was Ben's goodbye.
Mm-hmm. No more Sebastian.
No more Bash.
For Nick and Charlie, so Nick's dad is coming over for dinner.
Stefan.
Stefan. And Nick asked to invite Charlie and his family over for dinner too. So it's going to be a big like meeting of the families. And Charlie thinks this is a good idea because right now, like, his parents don't really view Nick in a great light because they see him as like a distraction to his studies. So he's like, maybe us going over for dinner will like change their mind about Nick and make them realize like what a good guy he is. Tori thinks this is a horrible idea. She's normally right. Also, just like quick side thing that I feel like is kind of important is while they all go out shopping for dresses and outfits to wear to Elle's art show, which we'll get into, and to prom. And during that time, Nick asked Charlie to be his prom date.
Yes, it's very cute.
It's very cute.
And in a romantic way.
So Charlie's family shows up for dinner. They're all seated. They're just having like casual, normal dinner conversation. And David, which is Nick's brother, starts to like ask Nick, like, how did you meet Charlie?
Well, it's Dad, do you know how he met Charlie?
Yeah. And just like pushing to basically force Nick to come out. And Stefan is just fucking oblivious over here. He does not realize what's going on at all. And he's like, oh, have you guys met any, or have you guys got any girlfriends since like they last saw him in France? And they're like, no, dude, we have not.
Awkward tension at the table because there's Charlie's parents, his sister, Nick's brother, and Nick's mom, and then Nick's dad. And the only person at the table that doesn't know they're dating is the one that asked if they have girlfriends.
Yep. And after that question, David goes, oh, I'm not so sure he's interested in girls. And so at this point, Nick is like, fuck it. Like, this is awful. David's making this horrible. And you know what, Dad? Like, you're not really a part of my life. You don't try to be involved. You only bother seeing me twice a year. So, like, I don't care anymore. And, like, this is Charlie, and he's my boyfriend, and we're together. And it is kind of this, like, I want to say beautiful in the way that it feels very real. And, like, Nick's dad deserve to hear all of those things.
And he doesn't deny that. It's a very cathartic moment. And I was even curious, in the comics he says you can only bother to see me once a year, but in the show he says twice a year.
Maybe because we see them see each other like twice in 1 week, so they were trying to make it seem, I don't know.
Oh, maybe, because in the comics his dad doesn't meet him in Paris.
But after this moment, Nick kind of leaves the dinner table to go outside. Charlie follows, and they're kind of, Charlie's like, oh my gosh, I'm proud of you for doing that. Nick's mom comes out, and she's like, that went so well. Like, I'm so proud of you for saying all of these things to your dad. Like, he needed to hear it. And then we see as the Springs are leaving, Charlie's mom suggests having Nick and Nick's mom over for dinner in a few weeks. So that's kind of like, good sign that everything went well and maybe Nick is growing on them. And then at the end of this kind of Nick and Charlie section, at the end of this dinner, Sarah and Nick are cleaning up, and she points out that Charlie barely had anything to eat. And so in this moment, you see Nick go to good old Google and start Googling eating disorders so he can learn a little bit more about what's going on.
Yeah, he's been aware of Charlie's eating issues, but they've never called it an eating disorder. And this is when he finally takes that initiative. Also in that scene where Charlie's mom is saying, like, maybe Nick's family can come over, just before that, Sarah was telling Charlie's mom, like, that must have been really hard for Nick to say to his dad, and he must really care about Charlie. Which I just thought was sweet.
So sweet.
Tao and Elle.
Yeah.
This is a big one for Elle because she gets notified near the beginning of the episode that not only did she get into Lambert, the art school she wants to go do for sixth form, but also her piece is going to be shown at the Lambert's art school's Here and Queer exhibit. So at first, she just shares the news that her piece will be shown, and she tells everyone that she hasn't heard back about admissions yet because she's worried about how Tao's going to react, which is like very clear. But then she actually confirms it when they're out shopping. So because she tells them, everyone's like, oh my God, we have to go. And so they're like, Paris squad goes to Lambert. And so they all go to a thrift store and go shopping for outfits to the Lambert exhibit as well as to prom. And that's while they're shopping is when she lets it slip to Tara that she heard back and to not tell Tao. Of course, then when they get there, the first thing that happens,
literally the first thing
that happens is someone comes up to Elle and says, oh my God, I'm so excited for you to join us in the fall. And like, I just don't know how Elle thought that was gonna go anyway.
Well, especially, I'm sure you'll get to it, but like her piece is like the star piece. Like they have a bunch of pieces that people are walking around and looking at, and then hers is like covered and revealed. So if she knew that she was being like really shown as a key piece in this exhibit, like at least during that moment, of course they're going to announce that you're going to the school in the fall. Like,
yeah. But anyway, because of that, all of her friends cheer, and then Tao comes up and she's like, I'm sorry, you're probably pissed I didn't tell you. And this episode is one of those ones where we really see so much growth in Tao, even from the beginning when it just says that her piece is going to be shown in the exhibit. We see him texting like, so does that mean you're leaving us? And then he deletes it and changes to like, does that mean you got in? And then in this moment when she says, I know you're probably pissed, he's like, no, don't ever like make a decision based on me. And she says she still hasn't decided, which I think is stupid, but that's okay. And it's a cute heart to heart that they have where he is showing a lot of growth. And like Jess said, her piece gets a special display, which I think is so, like, I'll talk about it later, I guess, but like anyway, her piece is revealed and it's her safe space, and it's her in the art room with Tao. It's a painting of herself and Tao and Charlie and Isaac in the art classroom, which is also very sweet and touching. And then when they get home, Tao tells his mom that he and Elle got together, and she's like, let me go text every single person in the family. And he's like, oh my God, that's so embarrassing. And she's like, we've all been waiting so long, which is funny because then she's got like the gossip train going.
Yep. So cute. Okay, Isaac. So while they're all going to shop for outfits for prom and the art show, Isaac leaves to go meet up with James, and everyone is kind of like, ooh, something's gonna happen.
They're gonna
like,
kiss.
They're gonna kiss, and none of them know that James already did kiss Isaac and that he's like processing all this because he's kind of doing it all internally. And on his own. And so he leaves to go to the library or like a bookstore where I feel like it looks like James works there.
James works at the bookstore, yeah.
Okay. So he goes to a bookstore where James works, and he just like lets James know that like he doesn't know how he's supposed to feel when he has a crush on someone, and like he feels like something's wrong with him.
Yeah.
And kind of like leaves it at that, and he returns to the group, and they're all like, oh, you kissed, like something happened, tell us, and kind of like egging him on. And he gets like pretty upset that they only show interest in his life when there's some sort of romantic drama going on. And so he kind of like storms off from the group, and it's like, I just don't want to talk about it.
I want to be clear that when he says he thinks something's wrong with him, James says there's nothing wrong with you.
Oh, yeah, that is important to know.
But
James was supportive of it, I guess, is what I was going to add too.
yeah.
Like, it wasn't an awkward, it was an uncomfortable conversation in the terms of like Isaac could definitely had a hard time like sharing that with James, but it wasn't an awkward or uncomfortable conversation in the terms of like how it was handled and how they kind of communicated with each other afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the art exhibit, we see Isaac find this piece that's like a bunch of different things like hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah, it looks like letters that are folded up and hearts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really get it.
Yeah, I don't really get it. But,
explained right after.
But Isaac is like really drawn into this piece. And then the individual who ended up writing the piece comes up to Isaac and shares that it was about their own experience, learning that they were ace. And,
aromantic and asexual.
Yeah, ace and aromantic. And kind of explaining like what that is to Isaac and how they felt going through those feelings and learning that they were ace and arrow. And Isaac kind of has like a oh my god moment.
He
like
has his Heartstopper moment. He gets his little animations.
Yeah.
Tara and Darcy. So this one's been brewing for a while. As we noticed in Paris, Darcy is a little more aloof, and Tara's never been to her home life. So in the start of this episode, we see Darcy go home for the first time, and there's a motorcycle again, and motorcycle outside of my apartment, not at Darcy's home. But she goes home, and we see these like purple clouds shrouding the house, which is a very distinct signifier. We don't see her again really until the art exhibit, or well, no, when they're shopping, we see her, obviously. She buys a suit. It's really cute. She can't afford it, but everyone is like, oh my god, you have to get it, and they all chip in. It's this very sweet moment. And then when they go to the art exhibit, she gets a text from her mom, and she has to leave before Elle's piece is shown. That's fun. Not really, but she's like, I have to, otherwise she won't let me go to prom. So she goes home, and later on she's trying to share this suit with Tara, like in a photo, and her mom comes in and she starts yelling at her about how she can't wear the suit, and because she looks like an idiot or whatever, and Tara's like, my friends love me for who I am. Or not Tara, Darcy, sorry. But there's this very distinct choice where they're fighting and you know what they're fighting about, but you can't hear all the words, and the music gets louder and the voice gets softer and the purple clouds come over it, so that you just feel a lot of the feelings without having to hear all of the words. And at the end, because Darcy won't succumb to her mom's pressure, she gets kicked out of the house. And that's the end of the episode, I believe, is her getting kicked out.
I also would say the way that I read it, it kind of seems like a choice too. Like Darcy chose to leave.
I'm pretty sure her mom points out the door and says something like, if you're not going to listen to me, then you can get out.
Then you can leave, huh?
I thought so, but yeah, I think because you wrote initially like Darcy runs away, and I was like, no, Darcy gets kicked out.
Yeah. Where in both of my rewatches, I guess I did see it like that. So I'd be curious with that perspective if I were to watch it again, if I would view it as getting kicked out. Because I always viewed it as she chose to leave.
Whereas both of my watches, I saw it as getting kicked out.
Huh.
So that's the episode. We get some good closure between Charlie and Ben. We don't get that much Nick and Charlie. Well, I guess kind of, but mostly just like more supportive boyfriends. And Elle and Tao are doing well. Elle's going to Lambert. Well, she says she doesn't know, but come on. And Darcy's the only one that's really struggling. Isaac is finding himself. Some of the moments that we loved.
I feel like we mentioned all of these. The only one that I have, which I would say is really small, there is this scene that we get of Tao dancing and vibing alone in his room, and this is like post something happening with Elle. I don't remember what specifically, but he's like just full on like dancing in his room, just like loving life, loving himself, and it's just very fun.
He has a very unique dance style. I
Yeah,
do
and it's a
feel like,
callback to season 1 because we do see his kind of funky dance style in season 1, so this felt like a very cute like solo callback to that.
yeah. We did. So if you listen to our first 2 episodes, we were much better about just like reading a straight bulleted summary and then having our notes. But we just gave you a classic 90s babies nostalgia style summary where we incorporated more of our notes. So there's that. But we saw, don't worry, we have more. We have more.
We have more.
But yeah, I just wanted to call out that I really liked the depiction of Darcy's home life. I thought that that was a very strong choice to make it so you couldn't even hear all of the fight. And you feel the emotions more than anything. I do also want to talk about Elle's very special treatment at this art exhibit because her piece is fine. It's like it's better than anything I could do. It's not better than anything else that's at the exhibit, and she doesn't even fucking go there yet. Like everyone else's piece is just out, and hers has a fucking like
cloth.
A cloth covering it, and she has to say a few words before it's revealed, and it's not like special.
I mean, I think it's a good piece. I agree with you, but it's like the rest of the art they were showing was also just as good. And it's weird that you're going to do this for a student that doesn't go there yet.
Right? What if she was like, actually, psych, I'm not going?
Yeah, it felt very weird. I wanted to bring up in an interview I was watching, Joe mentioned that at the end of season 1, when they found out they got renewed for 2 more seasons, he joked with Alice that he was not going to come back to Heartstopper for season 2 unless she wrote a scene with him in it that also had Olivia Colman. And that Alice took the request way more seriously than he would have ever thought, and that scene was more than he would have imagined. And I just thought that was really funny.
And in all fairness, the whole dinner scene is from the comics, so it's not like she was writing new material. But he got a number of them because he had some before in other episodes with her as well.
Yeah, he has that moment where they like make tea.
Yeah, where he's like, he starts picking up plates and she's like, "Oh, you are a good boy." Yeah, they have a number of cute moments, and especially this big one. I want to shout out to the music people that choose the songs. There's some real hits. Sometimes they're a little too on the nose, and sometimes I really love how on the nose they are. In Isaac's big moment of revelation, looking at the Arrow Ace exhibition or piece, there's a song that plays over him saying "Crush culture makes me want to spill my guts," which is just a really beautiful choice. It was a good moment. And then the other thing I want to point out from that art show is Imogen, because it's the whole Paris squad. Imogen sees Sahar come in and is like, "You can't say I'm the token ally anymore." And Sahar's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm bi." And Imogen kind of looks at her like she's like confused, but also maybe intrigued.
The other thing for the art exhibit I want to call out, which I kind of mentioned in our first episode, that I just thought the costuming was so awesome. Elle's dress at this art exhibit is gorgeous.
It is, yeah.
It's like sheer and flowy and beautiful, and she just looks stunning. And just, I don't know if like it was picked out by the actress or if like that was a choice by the costuming department or if it was like a joint effort, but it looks amazing.
I get the impression that a number of these were joint efforts now. Probably costuming, bringing a few pieces and letting them choose or asking for vibes. We have some good quotes.
Yeah.
So Charlie to Ben, as I mentioned, "I really hope you become a better person so you don't hurt anyone else, but I don't want to be there to see that happen." We love a boundary.
We do. Nick's dad, Stefan says this next line when they have the dinner table scene. I was like, "You have not grown up into the man I hoped you would be, David," Which then we do have to say that Sarah immediately is like, who the fuck are you to say that?
But also, he's not wrong.
No, exactly. I liked it because I'm like, well, Stefan, yes, that is true, but also you are not a good man, sir.
And for context, he's been getting along with David super well this whole time. And then Nick has his big outburst. And then David's like, you're just going to let him talk to us all like that? Like, he's such a drama queen. And that's when Stefan's like, you didn't grow up into the man I hoped you would be. So it was like a good moment to call him out because he's being a little shit.
Yeah, he was. Speaking of David being a little shit, Tori, just our hero, Tori Spring, truly the best. While they're sitting at the dinner table, when things start to come up, when David's like starting to poke, Tori kind of looks at him and is like, what's your problem? And then when he says the line, I'm pretty sure you can correct me, but when David says the line of, well, I don't think he's interested in girls, Tori like turns towards him, takes her fingernails and claws them into his arm, and is like, don't you dare, like under her breath. And it is just, it's good.
And Tori is Nick's age, which I didn't realize. I knew she was still in high school, but she's only Nick's age, only a year older than Charlie. And David goes to college, which I think makes it a little bit better, that it's like this teenage girl digging her nails into him.
And then at the end, she's like, so everything happened at the dinner table and she's upstairs using the bathroom, washing her hands. And from the bathroom, she can overhear like David gossiping to, I don't know, one of his friends being like, Nick's always causing drama. He has to make everything about him. Just kind of like
probably the influence of his drama queen boyfriend.
Just saying like horrible things. And Tori walks out and full on kicks him and says,
kicks his phone down the stairs.
Yeah, but still kicks him.
Yeah.
And it's like, you are a pathetic little man. Yeah. It's just really good.
She says like, speak ill of my brother again and I will end you. I also wrote in our list of Tori is a badass lines, which you didn't have, I don't think, is in the great background lines that you don't notice is when like Sarah and Charlie's mom are talking and then Charlie and Charlie's mom are talking. In the background you can see Tori and Nick and she's like, are you okay? And yeah, and she says, your brother's a prick, and he just kind of nods.
Yeah.
And then the other quote we have is just so good because they walk into the house. Charlie and Nick are walking up to the house before dinner, and since Nick hasn't come out yet, Charlie's like, so do we have to pretend to be platonic BFFs? And he's like, yeah, just for a little bit. And he's like, all right, mate, pal, bro, supportive straight
friend. So good.
And Nick's just like, Charlie, like, come on.
Oh, so good.
It's a good episode, and it does kind of feel like a penultimate, which our final episode now that we led into is
perfect. This one we're going to do a little bit different. I know you've seen us bounce around in summary styles, but this one really revolves around prom. So we're going to talk about some of the couples a little bit, but then really focus on prom. So for Nick and Charlie, the morning of prom, Nick makes a post on Instagram, his final post, about them being boyfriends with the caption, boyfriends, I'm bi actually. And they show each other their prom outfits and it's very cute. You can tell they're both just like very into each other and think that they look hot, and it's just cute. But we see them prepare for their first public experience as an out couple. And then Tao asks Elle to be his girlfriend, and she says yes. She also decides she's going to Lambert because, like, duh, why would she not go?
So, getting into the convoluted plot. So, prom. It's prom, guys. And remember, we discussed Sahar was in charge of prom, and she was like, she roped in Tara and Darcy immediately. So now it's the day of prom, and Tara's setting it up with Sahar, and she's like, Imogen says she's gonna get the food when she goes to Asda in like a couple hours. She's like, dude, it's just freaking out. It's not happening. Okay, nothing
Even
looks.
though, can we note there are like 20 other people in that scene also doing stuff for the prom?
They have a lot of extras. And also, Tara can't get a hold of Darcy. She's not answering any of her texts, which is adding additional stress. And she's like, you know what? Nothing, like, there's no way this prom is going to happen unless I call in the Paris squad and get the gang here. And so she group chats them all, and they all immediately reply. And then she's like, also, Darcy, text me back if you see this. And I just want to say, like, I think it's so funny that she's like, we have 20 people here, but you know what's really going to pull it together is these, like, 6 gays that just, like, are my friends. Because apparently they can do anything.
I also think it's easier to delegate tasks to your friends and have them listen, and you trust their ability to get it done. So I kind of understand it to an extent.
Yeah, yeah. And while they are setting up, there's a moment where so someone comes up to Nick and Charlie and is like, is it true you two are going out? And Nick says, yeah. And they're like, oh my God, that's so cool. You guys are a cute couple. And walks away. It's perfectly fine. But you can see Charlie doesn't look quite well. And so Nick is like, do you want to take a break? We can go get food. And Charlie says, no, I had a late breakfast. So he goes and has a heart-to-heart with Tao and says, you know, I think that maybe Charlie never really got over the bullying and it's worse than he'll let on. And Tao's like, you know what, he won't really open up to me either. And they relate it to how it can take a long time to get over something really bad that happens. And Tao said that his dad passed away when he was 12, and he still isn't fully over it, and that's why he's so defensive and like afraid of people leaving him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, don't make it weird. So that's fun. And then everyone goes home to get ready because they're all done apparently early. This is when we see Nick and Charlie show each other the outfits. And Darcy is still missing. They come back to prom now all dressed up, and Darcy is still missing. And Tara just tells them, oh, she's running late. Don't worry about it. And let's go in and enjoy the prom.
But you can tell they're kind of worried about it. Like, everyone's like looking and they're like, are you sure? Like,
they're like, say the word and we'll worry.
Yeah.
And we have a great scene of Tao and Elle just tearing up the dance floor with their classic fishing moves. And we see the rugby lads apologize to Nick, and he's like, yeah, I missed you too. And they're friends again. We see Nick feeling kind of weird about Charlie. We see a cute photo booth moment with Charlie and Isaac and Tao and Elle. And then as Nick's walking around, he sees Tara looking concerned, and she tells it. She finally is like, Darcy hasn't been texting me this whole time. I really don't know what to do. How do you talk to someone about something they don't want to talk about? And he clearly relates because of Charlie, but he doesn't say that. It's just on his face. And he says that you just have to try, I guess. And so she leaves to talk to Darcy's house.
to talk to her house, correct.
And that's when her mom answers the door and is like, yeah, my daughter's not here because she wanted to wear a suit like a lesbian. And then the gang texts Tara. I just spaced on the name for a second. The gang texts Tara that Darcy showed up because she just showed up to prom then in that moment. Also, Darcy's been sleeping at the park.
Yeah, it's also important. Other like small thing. Are you good with prom?
Except for another, yeah, I'm good for now. Yeah. I'm good.
Okay,
I'm good.
great. Cool. Small little intermittent thing. We see Isaac have this moment where he walks out of the prom into the school library, and he picks up a book from the like LGBTQ plus display that we see James and him set up earlier in the season. I think in episode 1. And he picks up the Ace book, and Also, yes, you are right. He doesn't check it out. He does just take it and walk with it. But that's like his
He's like, this
Heartstopper
is mine
moment.
now.
You see like the fireworks and stuff like coming out of the book as he's holding it.
Yes. Okay, more convolution. Is that a word? I don't know. It doesn't matter. I'm gay.
Yeah.
And so Darcy shows up to prom, as I said, and also around this time, Nick had seen Charlie sitting by himself, and Charlie's like, I think that we forgot the point of coming out in the first place, and I really just wanted to have a fun night with my friends. Why don't we go to yours? And Nick's like, I do have an empty house tonight. So they go to Nick's place, and they bring Darcy, and they tell Tara, and so Tara shows up, and Darcy tells her that she didn't want to say I love you because Tara doesn't really know this other half of her where she's not confident at home and she's not out to her parents, and she might not ever be because her parents are assholes. And how could Tara really love her if she doesn't know half of her? And it's sweet. And then they dance. And then there's the sweetest montage to August by Taylor Swift, which is kind of a brilliant choice and kind of a somber choice. But it's very cute. The friends play beer pong. They dance. They make out. They dance some more. They play hide and seek, which is my favorite.
Yeah.
And then they all leave, and we get this cute little shot of Nick and Charlie in the doorway saying goodbye, like they're the dads and they own this house.
That is what happens. They're like shuffling everyone out the door and saying goodbye. Like,
and then they're standing in their suits in the doorway waving like literally it's their house.
Yeah.
And we get the really, really sweet scene that a lot of people have been posting about on Tumblr, where they go upstairs to Nick's room and hang out. They're just like cuddling and kissing, and Charlie says they should leave, and then Nick's like, let me kiss you some more. And Charlie looks at one of Nick's rugby trophies, and so Nick tells him a cute story about how he's pretty sure he had a crush on the coach, and that's the only reason that he got the trophy, because he tried really hard because he had a crush on the coach, but he didn't realize it at the time. And now you got to tell me something about you. And Charlie's like, what? And he's like, well, tell me about the bullying. Trigger warning, Nick Nelson. Way to just fucking sideline your boyfriend like that. And so he makes him tell him about it, and Charlie tells him that it got really bad, and in addition to his eating disorder, he started to self-harm.
And that he started to believe what people were saying about him.
Yes. And Nick makes him promise to tell him. He was like, we said in Paris that we would tell each other when we have stuff going on. And if it ever gets that bad, tell me. And Charlie's like, I just don't ever want to be a burden to you or for you to see me as this like broken thing. And he's like, you're not. You're my literal boyfriend. I've just done so many brave things with you because you were there holding my hand. And I want to be that for you. And then he says, I love your hair. And I love your eyes. And I love... And then his mom comes home.
Correct.
And then Charlie leaves in his sweatshirt and is texting the message, I love you, but doesn't hit send, and that's where the show ends. And that last scene, the song is You're So Pretty by Waysha Project, which is William Gao, who plays Tao, and his sister's band, and I think it's the best song of the season. Like it's the most iconic music moment of the season.
And it just fits so... It is such a beautiful, like eerily beautiful song. And it just fits it so well.
Absolutely.
Also, I don't think you mentioned when you were talking about Tara and Darcy, so I just have to say for plot. In the whole dancing thing, we also get a scene where they say I love you to each other, and how Darcy's like, I just kind of find that hard to say. And they're literally... Tara's like, we just need to practice it. And they're like, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And they're like screaming it back and forth at each other. And we just have to mention that.
I forgot about that moment, and it's so wholesome that when you said it, I just instinctively grabbed my boobs.
It is so wholesome.
Yeah, and they just like shouted at each other. It's so good. And something I really love about that scene, and we're getting into the notes, who fucking cares, is that you can hear from her narrative, but also see in the performance the internalized homophobia within Darcy, and that's part of her struggle to say I love you. That's how I interpreted it, which is
Mhm.
something that a lot of queer people struggle with, is even once we've accepted that we're queer, we still have internalized homophobia or biphobia, and maybe like hold ourselves back from things that we would really like because we still have shame associated with it. So I appreciate that part of her story.
Also, Imogen shows up to prom and is walking in her gorgeous, like, lilac-ish dress.
Like
And she's like,
satin and yeah.
yeah, she looks beautiful. And she's like walking up. And also, we never mentioned, but Sahar also is like in the band and playing guitar at this prom.
To be fair, we don't know that until literally the prom when everyone shows up and Sahar like walks in and is like, "All right, I'm going to go join the band now."
Yeah, she like has her guitar on her. So she's up there playing guitar, and we see Imogen show up and like walk towards the stage and kind of just like stare in awe and like watch Sahar and start smiling watching Sahar play the guitar.
And little music notes come out of the guitar.
Mhm.
Also, a lot of people on Tumblr interpret the lighting of Imogen in that moment as sapphic lighting, as like the lesbian pride flag. It's not quite as obvious as the bi lighting of Nick in the first season when he's watching the girls kiss. But there is some interesting lighting there, and Heartstopper does love a lighting cue.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about the implication of this scene and what it means for Imogen, because yes, we already have lesbian representation, but we have lesbians who know that they're lesbians. And a lot, I think, the way that we had Elle earlier in this season be like, do you even like Ben? Like, he's not that good to you. And she's consistently gone after gay men. That is quite like an indication of compet, which is like compulsive heteronormativity or
Mhm.
heterosexuality. If anyone listening doesn't know, it's what a lot of people go through, especially queer women, when like you feel like you just want male approval, and you confuse that and confuse what you're supposed to be doing according to society with what you actually want, and don't
Mhm.
realize you actually want women.
Mhm.
Anyway, that's just my sorry, I'm jumping ahead, but that's my interpretation of what's happening
No,
with her.
no, I think right because they give us the Sahar cuddling scene. We also get the thing where she's like, "Well, it would just be easier if I liked girls." Like, we get a lot of things that are kind of
Odds.
hinting at maybe this progression for her character. So I'm very interested on seeing where it went. A couple other prom things. Elle's prom dress sucked. I'm not going to continue more than that. They acted like it was amazing. It was not. Also, my biggest bone to pick as an event planner with this prom is in the beginning, Sahar's like, I'm thinking classic theme. And freaking Darcy's out here throwing out all these crazy themes. And everyone's like, no, Darcy, it's fucking classic themed. Get with it. It's not fucking classic theme. Literally, there's balloons that say Summer of Love, and everything's like pink and balloons. And like, it is not classic.
I never got that there was supposed to be a true theme, like, because they went back and forth so much. I just thought they were like, you know what, the theme is prom. I never
Sure, but
even heard the classic part.
they said it multiple times. I was so upset. I was like, this is not classic themed.
Also, Miss Singh during the setup or the start of prom is like, "Hey, Mr. Ajay, you should tell Mr. Farouk that we need more chaperones." And so Mr. Farouk comes and they agree to go out for dinner and drinks because they're like that night in Paris. It was stupid, wasn't it? No, I'm just saying next time it happens, we should maybe get drinks first. Next
Mhm.
time.
So fun.
I really have to point out, there's no way that these 6 little kids came in and made this whole prom happen. Also, when they leave, the auditorium looks distinctly different to when they enter again. There are so many more decorations up again. And like the entire time that they're like setting up the prom, they're flirting. Like Nick's pretending that Charlie stapled his fucking finger. Tao and Elle are painting each other more than the decorations. Like they're not doing all of this.
Agreed. Also, the amount of decor and things that are hung up would take days. Like, it would not take, like, because we see them in the morning, they're not at the school. Then we see them show up to the school, and then we see them at home getting ready before prom starts. Like, they were not at the school that long. There's no way all of that happened.
Yeah. My last big note is something I really liked about a cohesive theme throughout this season. We talked a lot about Charlie getting progressively less well. And at the very start of the season, when he tells Tori Nick's going to start coming out, and Tori asks, like, are you worried because of all the bullying? He's like, no, because I went through that so Nick doesn't have to. I can protect him. Everything's going to be perfect. That's almost word for word what he says.
Yep.
And then throughout the season, we see him being triggered and unwell, but still telling Nick that he's good. And even in this episode, he tells Nick this is the best my life has ever been, even though he's not eating enough and doesn't seem quite himself. And so in that scene where Nick and Charlie are talking and Nick is telling him to be honest, he says, like, I know you like everything to be happy all the time, but I'm your boyfriend and you don't have to be perfect for me. So he pulls that word back around, and it's just so like, it makes me feel supported, and I'm just watching. Oh, I also wrote that none of these friends have any sense of personal space, because Nick and Tao hardly even like each other, and they sit really close to each other too.
I think we might have mentioned this one last time, but maybe it's just in my brain. But Tao says this to Nick, and it's like, they're all idiots for assuming you're straight, and I include myself in that.
I have had so much deja vu recording this episode. I swear everything that we say, I'm like, didn't we say this already? But maybe that was just us going through these notes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a good line. I love Harry walking through prom, and he tells the rugby lads, I can't believe Nick's showing off his boyfriend, but none of you managed to bring a girl.
The amount of focus on the fact and like props that are given to Nick to being the first one to bring a date and none of them had a date was just amazing.
And the other quotes we said, unless you want to shout any of them out.
No, I think that's good. I think we can go into our wrap up.
Yeah, which we have a lot to say. So
we do. We have mentioned this a lot, but a big thing we want to focus on is like how much of a genius Alice Oseman is, and like their ability to bring something from a webcomic to a graphic novel to then a TV series and include all the moments that all of her fans needed her to include, while also building this incredible world of characters and stories in a way that feels so wholesome and relevant to the queer experience at that age is just
natural.
Yeah. And she's our age. Like, what are we doing?
That upsets me so much. Her first novel was published when she was 17. And if you don't know, her first novel is called, I forgot what it was called, whatever. But it focuses on Tori. Tori and Michael. And then there's Nick and Charlie are briefly mentioned. And so Alice was like, what is their story? And so Alice started writing Heartstopper as a webcomic. And I know that, okay, I'm restarting. But basically, like, she has multiple works where the characters appear and you learn more about them, but Heartstopper is by far the largest one, and I hadn't read it until this week. When we stopped recording, I was like, I need more, so I read all of it, and I thought that it would have more of the friends in it, and it's not. It's really Nick and Charlie, and like, you barely see Tao and Elle, let alone the rest of them. So the way that Alice has then built all of these characters into this world for the show, they've added so many details. And Imogen and Isaac are entirely new characters as well. And yet they fit so perfectly. Like, it's just so good.
It's so good. And just I it's just so well done. The way it focuses on joy while still handling like all of these really real experiences and things that people go through with like homophobia and bullying and eating disorders and self-harm and figuring out sexuality and all of these like tough things that you're going through at that age. It handles all of those while doing it through a lens of joy, and it just is so amazing. Like, I don't think there's any other show like it, truly, that does the same thing.
That is so, yeah. And Alice, if you're listening, if you waited this far in our episode and found our tiny little podcast, we think you're the coolest person ever and really appreciate your work. To anyone listening who hasn't kept up with Alice's work, also, the first book was called Solitaire. Sorry, it hit my brain. Alice has repeatedly gone on hiatus from publishing Heartstopper. She published it online very consistently, and then while doing season 1 and then again during season 2 had to go on a hiatus for almost a year each time because they were just getting so burnt out writing the show and weren't having as much joy creating the comic and couldn't even think of new storylines or like how they wanted to wrap it up. And so there's still more content to come on the webcomic. It's not completed. So hopefully we get enough seasons to cover all of that. But just like, I don't know, I hope Alice knows how much that effort and work is valued, but also hope that she's taking care of herself.
Yes, agreed.
Some of the main themes of this season that were not just love are like friendship and bravery, which sounds like I'm talking about Harry Potter. But they're really such brave little boys.
Yeah, they are.
And also I really appreciate the build of the eating disorder and Charlie being unwell alongside the coming out plotline.
I agree because I read the comics after watching season 1, so I kind of knew what was coming and I wasn't sure how they were going to incorporate the build of that. And I think it was done really, really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they even flipped things around a bit because, we'll talk about it in a little bit. But yeah, they flipped the things around a bit, but still managed to make the cadence very good.
You make it feel cohesive. Like it didn't feel like it didn't make sense.
Jess, do you have a favorite moment of the season?
I don't know. All of them. I think favorite funny moment is the good mates scene.
It's classic.
I think it's probably my favorite funny moment.
Oh my god, mentioning on that briefly, in addition to Alice's genius, as we discussed, almost every single because I didn't realize this because I didn't read the comics until just before this recording. Almost every single quote that we picked out as our favorite was a direct quote from the webcomics. Like so much of this dialogue is just from the webcomics.
Yeah, it like literally they knew like, oh, these are the moments that my fans need to see in the show and just like pulled them all out and made sure to incorporate them. Like she is just amazing. I'd say my favorite wholesome moment, I don't know. I have so many, but probably Tara and Darcy's I love you scene in episode 8 is probably my favorite wholesome. What are your favorite moments? It's a hard question.
Yeah. I do really love the acting in the final scene between Nick and Charlie. I think Kit is very good with his face and conveys a lot in that. So that brings me joy. Something that's not a moment specifically, but a theme that I think is a little underappreciated is Nick and Tara's friendship, because we really forget like yes, Tara and Darcy were Elle's friends, but also Tara and Nick knew each other before anyone else knew each other. They kissed when they were 13, and then they didn't talk for years, but then when he's like at the recitals in season 1, that's when he comes out to Tara and
First.
Darcy before anyone else, and that is when they invite them out on the double date for the milkshakes, and they like start to just seamlessly incorporate into this friend group. And when they're setting up for prom, they have this cute moment where she's on Nick's shoulders
Yeah.
putting up decorations. And I just really like their dynamic. I think it's a little underappreciated.
Agreed. We've kind of touched on this, but do you have anything else to say on like how it compares to season 1?
I like that it's a little more mature. And I know that Kit has said in an interview that the first season was like, this boy, Nick, is absolutely impossibly wholesome. And season 2 kind of rounded him out and made him a little more believable. And I do see that. I don't necessarily think he was ever too impossibly wholesome, because I love a wholesome human, because I'm a wholesome human.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do like the general depth that they added. I think season 1 was a little more surface level, but still very good.
I think there's just so many more like expansion on all of the side characters and additional plots and people being brought in that it just like really made the season feel like jam packed, but in the best way.
Mhm.
Where like season 1 did feel that way, like it was very easy to watch and the episodes felt full, but like this season just did it in an even like it just in a different way. Like every single moment is a good moment.
Yeah, that's why we had such a hard time summarizing and recording this in any reasonable amount of time, because every moment felt important. Oh
Mm-hmm.
my god, you know another moment I love is when the boys all squeal when Tao tells them that he kissed
Oh,
Elle.
yeah, that is cute.
What are you looking forward to in season 3? I initially wrote that I should go first because I haven't read the comics, but now I've read more of the comics than you have, so you get to go first.
I'm curious to see what it's gonna cover because the 5th book is coming out this fall. And we're kind of to the 3rd book ish, depending on how you look at it. Some things jump around. But I don't want to give any spoilers, but I feel like I'm looking forward to seeing Charlie's journey and how like Nick and Charlie tackle that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also just excited to see more things about the characters that aren't really in the books. Like give us more talent, Elle, give us Imogen. Like I would love like a more main plot following Imogen as well.
Agreed. That was going to be mine. Is I
Mhm.
can't wait to find out, is Imogen bi? Is Imogen gay? Like, her and Sahar, is it going to work? I would also love if it didn't work, because right now we have so many perfect couples, and that to me is probably the least realistic part of the show, actually.
Yeah. Fair.
There is like, if you think Charlie's unwell now, he will get more unwell, is how I will phrase it. And so I think everyone heavily suspects that that will be in season 3, because in the comics that's actually like right after Paris,
Hmm.
and then the dinner with the dad is after Charlie. It's like yeah, it jumps around. So I'm not so curious about that, but I am curious about when that happens. Like, I found the comics were very like short time periods, the way that each season has only been a few months, and then once we get into like that more complicated plot lines, it's like everything's jumping like 3 months, and I'm kind of excited for that, because they'll get even closer to their normal ages and you get to see a little more mature plot lines.
Hmm.
I have a whole rant. Are we ready
Yeah.
for the rant?
Yeah. I think I know what you're going to say, but yeah, go for it.
I had a rant with myself for 20 minutes the other day because I needed to get this out, and I couldn't talk to Jessica about it because we were going to record. I have 2 questions for you, and I know you'll know one of those questions is coming. You might suspect both. The first question I suspect you know is coming is, how do you feel on the dialogue around queer and non-queer people portraying queer characters.
How do I feel about the dialogue between
Around.
non-queer people around non-queer people portraying queer characters?
Yes. You know, like you've got Darren Criss famously was in Glee and American Crime Story and won all these awards as gay characters, and then was like, I've made it so far off gay characters, I'm going to stop playing them. And then Natasha Lyonne has played so many lesbians. And then this leads into what I want to talk about with Kit Connor. But yeah, how do you feel about that? Like,
I think I have mixed feelings because I do understand that an actor's job is to act, and sometimes that means putting on roles that you are not. However, if you are going to cast someone and you are able to cast someone who is queer for a queer role, then I think you should do so. Where I think that gets complicated is when it's children, which I'm sure is where you're leading. Yeah, I think because to me, it's no different than how I feel. So maybe I'll take a stronger stance actually, because it's no different than how I feel about casting characters with disabilities. It really fucking pisses me off in all these shows that all these actors that portray characters with autism are not fucking autistic. Cast an autistic person. There are plenty of them that are amazing actors. Fucking cast them, and they can portray it in a way more realistic way than any other actor who's not autistic could. And I feel that way about all disabilities. Just that one is very prevalent.
Yeah, I feel like
In
a lot of
TV.
people claim that like people with autism can't handle sometimes the demands of a film set. But first of all, it's a whole spectrum. So that might be true for some like people very far on a spectrum, but that's not necessarily who you need to cast to get an authentic portrayal. But also I think Down syndrome is one that you could not have someone portray that who does not have Down syndrome, because that would be really fucked up. And there are a number of actors I've seen in recent works that have Down syndrome. But like, if you wouldn't do it with that, why are you doing it with autism?
Yeah, but I also would argue like when we put characters in wheelchairs that are not wheelchair users, like it gets really
Degrassi.
Yeah, like we see it all the time, and to me, like I'm not okay with that. So I feel like I feel similarly where it's like if you have the option to choose a queer actor, then I don't understand why you would not.
Okay, this is just a hypothetical. What about the fact that like, and this was also related to her genius, which I forgot to mention, and I don't know if it's fucked up for me to say this, but it's something I thought about a lot while watching the show, is the fact that this is an incredible romance story. Like, this is an incredible love story. We love these couples. They're so wholesome. They're so beautiful. This is written by someone who's aro ace. Does that change at all? Like, the fact that this is someone who does not feel those emotions, does that change at all the level of authenticity of the story?
No.
What if Alice were straight?
Well, okay. See, that's hard because I feel like if it was straight, yes, then that would change the authenticity. It would feel less authentic. Yeah.
Even though a straight person is more likely to feel like the butterflies and the dramatics of the relationship and the kissing and the
I feel like that's hard because I think in a novel, okay, maybe not. Like I still feel like in my gut somewhere, I feel like it feels less authentic and I can't really explain why. When it comes to TV, now you're writing and you're producing something that needs to feel real. And so if you don't identify as queer, is that really going to then translate to be authentic when it comes out in TV? So then I guess if she was straight, then you would just hire another queer co-producer to make sure that those moments felt real.
Yeah, and I think the thing that really is the most important is being part of the LGBTQIA plus community, because it is very much like a found family story in the show, even more so than the comics. Next question. What age do you think constitutes a child actor?
Are we talking like actual law or like in what I think?
Yeah, like What do you think? Like, at what point does someone's age out of being a child actor and is just an
Well,
actress?
really, I think it should be 25 and plus because our brains don't reach maturity until our late 20s, mid to late 20s, a little bit later for men. So truly, it should be 25, but I understand that we call people adults at 18. So I guess then I would say 18.
Yeah. Yeah. I have so many thoughts and I don't know that they're any cohesive because I've already ranted to myself so many times about them. Any bit cohesive. But I have a lot of thoughts about Kit Connor being sort of forced to come out, um, which is what the note in our outline says, suggests knew all these questions were coming.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in the show, as we mentioned, we have this beautiful storyline where, like, 5 times throughout the show, when Nick is like, I'm not out yet, people repeatedly tell him, you don't owe anyone that information. You don't need to come out. So that's what he's acting. And it was in October of last year, after a long day on filming in Paris, that he was photographed holding hands with a co star for an upcoming movie that he's in, who is female. And people accused him of queer baiting. And initially he left Twitter, and then he got so fed up with it that a month later he came back and was like, I'm bi. Congrats on forcing an 18-year-old out of the closet.
Didn't he say something along the lines of
Missed the
like,
point of the show. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, seems like you missed the point of the show or something. Yeah.
And tons of celebrities came out in favor of him. Alice, of course, Olivia Colman, of course, but also a lot of celebrities not related to the show. And I like, first of all, he has said that he just holds hands with his co-star the way that he does with Joe, and like they're friends and whatever. Also, she's queer. I was stalking her Instagram. I have to admit, I am part of the problem, guys, but I don't ever post anything. That's the thing. I'm a lurker, but I don't post except for this
Yeah.
podcast. And she was at the New York City Dyke March, so she at least likes women. Don't know if she likes men, but also she's 23 and he's a fresh 19, so that made me feel a little weird. But I don't know. I feel like it's fucked up that people accused him of queer baiting. You can't queer bait as a human being. It's like Harry Styles gets accused of queer baiting all the time. And the thing is, you don't know if that person is queer or not. And it's not anybody's information to disclose that. But then you get into that issue of authenticity. And I kind of feel like, obviously, when they're a person of color, that matters. And when you are physically disabled, or even neurologically, to like a disability shows, that matters. And when you're trans, that matters. But when it's your sexuality, like, that's so nuanced and hard to say, because then you're forcing people to disclose that information. But then, like, because they're part of the public eye and they're involved in this project, do they in some way owe us that information?
No, no one owes you anything. And I think that's just like such bullshit when people think that people in the public eye owe anything. They don't owe you a picture. They don't owe you a conversation. They don't owe you information on their personal life. They don't owe you shit. And I think that's something, and no, it's not something they sign up for also. If that's the way you think, fucking get over yourself. I'm sorry, but that's truly how
No,
I feel
don't
about that.
apologize.
I think the other thing where it's like people could have just done some research into the show and like took this for what it was, but like Alice spoke about when casting and things like that she wanted the characters to be authentic and that she was casting
All
a lot
queer.
of people all queer and with identities similar to their characters.
Yeah.
So she wasn't forcing anyone to come out, but she was implying, hey, this is my vision, this is the actions we're taking to make sure this vision happens. So take with that knowledge what it is, and I think we all were like, there is a chance that this actor is bi because of the character he plays, but also it doesn't matter.
He initially auditioned for Charlie, who is just gay. And what's really interesting about the whole sexuality thing too is, like, yes, he was holding hands with a girl, so people were questioning it, which, oh no, bisexuality, heaven forbid.
Also, how many times have we held hands? Like, I don't understand. Like, who doesn't hold hands with their friends? And if
straight
you
people.
don't, I think that's a sad life.
I once fell asleep holding my friend's hand. It was
Oh,
really cute.
that's very cute. I love that.
Thanks. It's one of my favorite memories. But also something I think that's really interesting is that Joe only officially came out publicly this summer. He was privately out with his friends and family, and everyone just assumed that he was gay. And
Mm-hmm.
then after what happened with Kit, he said he really appreciated how he like took back the narrative and did it on his own terms. And so it was really like this year's Pride that Joe officially was like, yeah, I'm gay. But that didn't make any news because everyone already knew, quote unquote. But like, that has to do with that, I think, assumption of visibility and the way some people are more visibly queer than others.
I also think it like, and you like feel free to cut this out if you don't want this to be like talked about, but I also think it kind of connects to our experience because we are both individuals that have like, or at least I'll speak for myself, but I'm pretty sure you haven't or I would have seen it. We've not like publicly come out and announced on our instas to like all our friends and family and been like, I'm bi, babes, blah blah blah. Like we just have not done that. Personally, I have not done that because I think I might be omni or demi. I don't really know. I've explored that. There's a lot, not demi, pan is what I meant. Um, demi does exist, but that's
I'm
something
Demi.
different. But yes, omni or pan. I've like thought about those things, and bi just seems the easiest. But also, just personally, I don't think I owe anyone that information. Like you can date whoever you want, and I would just be someone who would like show up with whoever I'm dating and not really care what people were thinking. But it's like we are able to do that because like besides for our friends and family who we're close to, it's like
No one's ever
I'm
gonna
not
ask us.
no one's going to ask, and I'm not close enough with anyone on my Instagram to owe them that information. And the same exists just for celebrities. They are not close to anyone on their Instagram or their Twitter to owe them that information, but we afford this like luxury of like security and not having to do anything to like a regular person. But the moment that you have some level of fame, we decide that you can't have that. And that upsets me.
So that also gets into my question about what constitutes a child actor.
Yeah.
Because, like, you know, I, in college, was a huge fan of Dan and Phil. Dan and Phil are both publicly gay. They've lived together for about 6 years. They have never confirmed a relationship with each other to this day. Years before they came out as gay, the height of their fame, everything they were doing was together. They were touring together. They were writing books together. They like made a lot of videos together because they know that the majority of their fandom is joint and ships them together, these real life human beings. And there's always been so much pressure on them to come out and to publicly disclose their relationship. And they both came out on their own terms. And they still like, Dan now is actually uploading, which is like a first for him in a decade. And he like clickbait titles all the time that he's confirming his relationship with Phil, but that never actually is. Like
fantastic.
But so like I think that there is a level of security that they could still that like maybe if Kit were older, he wouldn't have felt such a need, or maybe if this wasn't such a beloved piece of media, he wouldn't have felt such a need, because people could accuse Dan and Phil of queerbaiting all the time because they were like reading their fan fiction and like going on tour together and stuff, but they never actually did say anything about it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I like, this goes into more of his performance as well, because I've been, look, my comp never matured above the age of 20, so I see a boyish smile and I'm like, I need to know a lot about that person. So I watched a 25-minute video of some YouTuber with 100,000 subscribers training with Kit in the gym, because they're both from the town of Croydon in South London. So they've like DM'd, and this guy's only 20 and Kit's only 19. And Kit was talking about how when he initially got cast, and it was announced, one of the things that he was hearing was that he was too small to play Nick, because Nick is supposed to be like 6'2" and this big rugby lad. And so immediately he just started like eating a lot. And then he's like, well, I'm eating all this, I should work out. So he was just doing like 200 push-ups a day, which is why his boobies started to get a little more prominent in season 1. And now he like works out a lot because he felt the need to get like broader for the role. And in the same explanation of this said that, you know, their cast is more age related. The first season he was grade 12 playing grade 11, and they would be looking at shows where there's like 20 and 30-year-olds playing kids and be like, oh, I don't look like that, but also that maybe that's the point of casting younger. So it's like he gets it, but I also think it was a little too much. I just feel like it's a lot of pressure. He also said in an interview that he feels like humans aren't meant to know of so many people and to be known by so many people.
I think that's true. No, it is a lot of pressure to put on anyone. And I mean, this is why I think we see so many Disney stars that have drug abuse or substance abuse and have like all of these big like demons that then they are struggling with for so many years into their adult lives. Because I don't think anyone's supposed to go through that, which is why when you first asked the question, my gut was 25. Because I'm like, I don't think anyone is whole enough to process that until 25.
So I think there's two kinds of child stars. I think there's the Disney and Nick kind, where they are trapped in being children, and then they quote unquote go off the rails when they are done being on these shows made for children and become adults and like have drug problems or become sexual and twerk with Robin Thicke at the VMAs. And those are the more like visible ones, with Allison Stoner creating all of this content around it. But then I think there's the other kind of child star that we don't really talk about, which is the children in shows made for adults, like Heartstopper, even more so like Millie Bobby Brown and Stranger Things, going to event, like it's like people don't know how to style them if they're not dressed for J14. So instead they're in like fully grown adult looking editorial outfits, their hair's done to where she's 16 and Drake is DMing her, and now she's 19 and engaged, and like they never even, whereas the Disney stars trapped as a child, these kids like never get to be kids. I told you I have a lot of thoughts about this.
I do think what's nicer about this show is like they did cast a lot of like 17, 18-year-olds, so they still got the bulk of like their schooling and stuff like without any sense of stardom.
Oh yeah, like they were
which
actually
helps.
Going to school.
Yeah.
And they have each other.
Yeah. I think it's hard.
I think I just worry about him, and I think people don't post like mean things about teenagers.
Also, like, we probably just shouldn't post mean things about other people unless they're doing mean things.
That's true.
Like, what a crazy concept.
Be supportive or be quiet.
Yeah, literally, just shut up. Or, like, text your friend about it if you really need to vent something nasty. But, like, you don't need to be putting it into the ether. It doesn't serve anyone. Do you want to talk about the gay response to Heartstopper?
Just very briefly, the reason I put that in is because I've noticed a number of older gays who aren't really older, but they look, a lot of gays died during AIDS, so old gays are like 30.
Sure.
Like I've seen Dan and Phil and also Trixie and Katya talk about Heartstopper, and some people just talk about Heartstopper in this way of like, it just makes me sad about, you know, what my childhood wasn't and like how hard my life was. And like, I'm coming from a great place of privilege because I didn't even know I was queer at the time when I was growing up, and I didn't deal with any bullying. But also like, shut up and just enjoy it. It's cathartic. So it's not really the gay response. This is just that's what I called it. Do you have anything about that?
Nope.
I just want people to shut up. And Jess wants me to shut up so we can finish recording.
I need to prepare for a hurricane, y'all. Is there anything else Heartstopper? Except like if you haven't watched it, go watch it. And like if you haven't watched it, are you living under a rock?
Tell us your favorite moment from season 2.
I wanted to briefly touch on like what's up next. And I think the like short answer is we don't know. But the long answer is we're open to suggestions. We're trying to do like maybe more indie films or indie TV shows, talk about music. So if you have anything you would like us to chat about,
Or
let us
foreign
know.
stuff, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that's kind of like outside of the realms of the strikes, though it can still be a little bit within the way that this is.
Give us a follow on all our social media, 90s Babies Nostalgia, spell out the word 90s, on Instagram and YouTube. Make sure to rate and review us on Apple and Spotify. 5 stars, please.
We hope you enjoyed the episode.
Yeah. We'll see you in the next one, talking about who knows what, but we're excited to be here and excited to see you next time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
90s babies nostalgia.